Hello, my name's Flipper. Welcome to my garage. I know. It's been a long time since we finally put a video out. And there is a very good reason for that. Okay, there really isn't. Anyways, we have been busy. We'll get to that in a second. Before we do, kind of a little bit of a viewer discretion, if you will. If you notice the video kind of jumped and maybe you missed some stuff, don't worry. You didn't have a seizure, or you didn't stroke out or anything like that, or take a little nap while you're watching the video. You see, what happened was the phone that I do most of my recording and all of my editing with, well, it took a long charge off a short charging cord. And, well, now it's a part of that big Silicon Valley in the sky. No, it's over at the recycling center at 132nd and 53rd. Anywho, bottom line is I did lose a bunch of footage, but we're going to work through this as best as possible. In the meantime, we have been busy through the off season. Show you what we've been doing. Quack, quack. Nice bend. We finalized all the fabrication and installed brand new radiator mounts and got that all buttoned in and tied up. Got some new radiator hoses, hooked them up as well. Hooked up all of our accessories, water pressure, water temperature, oil pressure, all of those. Made some bracing there. And there. Back here. And definitely right here. We took some time and bled the brakes on the car. That went well. No, it didn't. We made a new air box to duct air to the radiator using construction paper templates, and then transfer that over to corrugated plastic. The thought being, should we get into a little bit of an accident and crush the front end up, it won't puncture the radiator, at least in theory. Plus it's lightweight. And of course, you got to get air into the air box. So we made a little duct on the nose here. You know, while I was working on the radiator, got to looking at it and figured running an electric fan would probably be a lot easier than trying to make a mechanical fan work on that, especially where that radiator is located, you know, down in there. So got one of those. We're going to have to hook that up. This engine, we ran an electric fan on it in the past, and that seemed to work out okay. On top of that, with it being a little, 305 guy, kind of got to free up all the horsepower I can with it, you know? So, in addition to that, since I am going to run an electric fan, because I don't have enough to do already, I figure it'd probably be a good idea to run one of these. Little alternator, especially running our 100 lap features and stuff like that. It's a long time to go on that. And this way I can flip on the alternator during cautions, charge up the battery, we're good to go, in theory. So, yeah, we'll add that to the list. Which means I have to do that before I finish the airbox. Alright, so first up we're going to mount the electric fan. Get it kind of roughly in place here. And get the old Crayola out, mark the spot. We're going to use a screwdriver and kind of gently pry away the cooling fins there to make room for the little plastic, the zip tie style mount thing that these come with. Kind of interesting looking, but you want to be really careful here. You're just gently prying the fins away. Last thing you want to do is get a bleeder. And then you got the little plastic tie down on. Pull the fan up and then zip ratchet everything tight. And then all you gotta do is run your wiring. All right, we are ready to throw the alternator on, which means putting this little brackety guy, it's gotta go right, you can't see, like right there on the water pump where those two bolts are, which means, get out of here. We gotta pull those bolts out, which means all the coolant and everything's gonna dribble around. So I got this little wheelie basket thing from the dollar store here, so that way it'll catch everything, you know, all the coolant and whatnot. And then it's got these nice little, you can't see them, little wheels on the bottom, so that way when you go to pull it out, it's sure to catch on a rivet pin and slosh everything onto the ground, spilling what you did catch. Well, I figured out the problem. It mounts on the right side, not the left side. So we'll get that bolted up and everything. I am going to, once I have more time, work on moving that to the left and maybe down in here and making it part of this normal SERP. I don't know, whatever kind of belt that is. Because right now I got to put a pulley on the snout of the water pump to run a little SERP belt to the alternator. So we'll get that buttoned out. Alright, well, we got the alternator mounted. As you can see, the drive pulley just bolts onto the snout of the water pump there. And then, yeah, this sits right up here amid all the radiator hoses. Not really a fan of this setup, if I'm honest. So when we get a pause in between some of the races, I'm going to try to figure out a way to take this off and mount it down low on the left side, out of the way, and keep that weight lower too. But yeah, this is on. It'll get us by for now. And I got to run a quick wire to the battery, and that should be all set. While we're working on the front of the car, I figured we should take some time and pay attention to the shock and spring package on the car. Now, since I spent all my money on a fan, alternator, and upper control arms for the car, I'm kind of running out. So I've got a set of quality used AFCO shocks from my good friend John Culp over at Union City Speed Shop. And these are rebound adjustable. So they got a little adjustment right here, let you adjust how much the rebound is for adjustability. Anywho, these are considered a tie-down shock. And what that means is the rebound valving is a lot higher than the compression valving. So this shock will compress a lot easier than it will rebound or come back out. And this is handy for suspension setups called either bump stops or bump springs, which is where you go into the corner and the shock compresses down and there's a spring that goes right here inside your normal coilover, or a rubber bump stop that'll go in here. That's where your chassis and your suspension is going to ride, right in that little 2 to 3 inch area. I think I got a picture of one right here that'll give you an idea. Now, again, since I spent all that money on those other new parts, I really can't afford to spend a couple $100 or $1,000 or more to buy a
kit and springs and all the other shims and spacers and doodads and doohickeys and whatchamacallits that make that work. So I got to looking at it, and I got to looking around the shop, and well, I got a chunk of scrap 2-inch steel, no, excuse me, aluminum uh, rod. I'll be honest, I don't remember how or why I ended up with that. I think I rescued it from a scrap pile at one of my jobs. And while I don't have bump springs, I do have some used valve springs. And these are the dual coil flavor. So in my mind, I can run dual coils on the right, stiffer, and single coil on the left, so a little softer. In my mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start cutting up pieces of this. We're going to chuck it up on the old Harbor Freight lathe back there, see if I can make my own bump spring setup. How hard can it be? Okay, so I have my top and bottom piece. I got it overcut here a little bit, so that way this little nut fit right in there, and I'm not riding right on that nut, and I'm more on this, which is what takes all the load from your outside coils anyways. And I got a little recess cut right in there, so that way it'll help locate my bump spring. Bottom, similar setup, little recess, and that'll go like that, that'll go like that. The spring in between. So we thread that off. Yes, I've already loosened this ahead of time, come on. And we take the little aluminum nut guy off. Now, I've got this little rubber gasket, I don't know, washer thingy. It's slightly undersized, so it is just snug enough on this shaft. And then I'll put my base down, spring, and that, and we'll reassemble. And the purpose of this little rubber spring or washer thing is so that when the suspension compresses, got a little tongue tied there, this is going to be all the way up here, and this will come together like so, and then when it releases, this stays together, and that spring stays located correctly on your top and bottom piece. And this is cut just right, so that way, oh, jumped ahead of myself. When I slide this guy on, there we go. That all fits in there quite nicely like so. And now I have my own homemade bump springs.
One of the things we need to figure out is what the spring rate of our bump springs, that's what I'm going to call them, what the spring rate of those are. Those are just a kind of a GM Performance dual coil. See the second coil right in there? See a little closer there. Valve spring. I don't know what the spring rate is on this. To find out what it is, we got to compress it 1 inch, measure what the poundage is. That's why I got the old glass bathroom scale out. You know, trying to find a metal one of these is getting harder and harder, at least one reasonably priced. And the old 1950s Milwaukee drill press there. That's cool. So I got the bump spring, and I'm going to measure the height. And we're at 2 inches. Great. And then what I'm going to do is set my drill press to compress down to, that 1 inch mark. We'll set our stop there. And then, because, 2 inches minus 1 inch is 1 inch, at least last time I did math. And then what we'll do is we'll use the drill press to compress this spring all the way down to that stop. That'll be that 1 inch compression, and we'll get a number. So let's see. Whoop. Pull that right on out of there. That's fine. There we go. Okay, here we go. Hopefully this works. If not, I'm going to look like a fool. Oh yeah, numbers are going up as the arm's getting in my way. And we are, boom. As close as makes no difference, 335 pounds. That's my spring rate. Now that's what I'm running on the right front. On the left front, well, that's pretty simple, provided I can get it out. But all that is the single coil. Okay, I'm going to have to put the camera down and do this two-handed. Hang on 1 second. Okay, there we go. The left front, all it is this single coil. Because I'm really not going to lay down too much on the left front. Same height, same settings. I'm thinking we're going to be quite a bit less. So let's center that on there. And all right, here, we'll get on this side. I learned from the first time. Here we go. And compressing. Yep, 129. That's my spring rates for my bump springs. So during the winter, the off season there, y'all met Shop Dog 1 and you want a treat? Shop Rag. My wife decided we needed a cat. And I told her, I was like, we don't need a cat. She's like, yeah, we do. I was like, no, we don't. We don't need a cat. And she's like, we don't need a late model. I was like, we kind of need a cat. And, with that being said, you met Shop Dog 1 and Shop Rag. Let me introduce you to the newest member of Flipper's Garage, Shop Cat.
Meow, 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 meow.
So I made these little setup pads, a little area in the back there, put my scales on it. That way I can roll the car on the scales, get my weights, roll it back off the scales, make my adjustments, and kind of back and forth like that, which is perfect because you want to check your weight with the driver in the car, which is me, and I'm doing this by myself. So sit rep. It is 10 o'clock, night before first race of the year, Intimidator 100 at Kalamazoo. Finally got the car on the scales. That's great. Expected the car to be, it's an old car, it's an old chassis. I expected it to be a little heavy. What I did not expect was to, I might have to add a little bit of weight, maybe 100 pounds if I'm lucky. I have to add 300 pounds of lead to this car to make weight. We're allowed 61% left side weight with Kalamazoo, 60% with the Reveal the Hammer series. Of that 300 pounds I have to add to the car, 100 of it needs to go on the right side of the car to maintain those percentages. I I'm gonna have to get on the phone tomorrow and borrow steel lead. Yeah, we're not gonna make it to the race tomorrow, but I guess it's kind of a good problem to have. It's better than being heavy, so on to the next one. Well, to give you an idea of what we got to do, we got to try to get all of that in that. And to put this into a little bit of perspective, that is a 10-pound piece of lead. That's like trying to put a 50-pound thing of cat litter in a 10.3. The math is hard. So we have the weight on the car. You can see I got a big chunk right there. And there's actually 3 big, long 30-pound bricks right there. I got some more over on the left side. I actually have a 3 by 3 inch weight box on the left side that's full of lead. Finally got enough lead in this thing that we're going to make weight, not get disqualified, as long as the fuel cell is absolutely full. We've got about 50-50 front to rear percentage on our weight, and hitting that 60% left side exactly, which is going to put us right on the mark for reveal the hammer. So with this thing sitting as low to the ground as it is, I've actually got about 4 inches total ground clearance on the right side and 3 inches on the left. It makes it very, very difficult to get this on the trailer. So that's why I made these. What this is this going to go in place of the coilover spring right here. It's going to jack this thing way up. Going to give me all the clearance I need to get this thing loaded on the trailer without having to buy half of Home Depot and extending out a bunch of wood ramps and stuff and, you know, making it a 3-mile long approach to get this thing on the trailer. So that should work nicely. So now that we got the car in 4x4 mode, we can do a test load, see how it's going to fit on the trailer, see what I need as far as ramps, ramp extensions, stuff like that. If it's going to hang up anywhere along the frame, hopefully not. Hopefully that's all good. Not only that, this is also going to give me a chance to test a new winch that I bought. Had my winch that I originally had stolen during the winter, so let's not even get into that. So on today's episode of Square Peg Round Hole, we got the loading struts in, which jack the front end up, which will give me clearance to get it up and on. But, well, the winch, that worked beautifully. Perfect. But if you look here, we've got about a 1/2 inch of clearance there. And let's get over here. And if you look over right back in the back there, there's about 1 inch of clearance. Yeah, there we go. So, yeah, that's fine. So the race car loaded up on the trailer and test complete. Decided we'd take her out to the Wasso Speedway Wednesday night for a quick practice. Kind of a last minute thing, and with that and it being on a Wednesday night and me leaving directly from work and kind of doing it alone, I didn't really get an opportunity to shoot any video, unfortunately. However, you didn't miss much. You see, we made one practice session, about 4 laps, about half throttle. I just wanted to make sure, nothing fell off the back there, and pulled into the pits. Car promptly shut off and wouldn't refire. Yeah, that's to be expected, I guess. And got to diagnosing there in the pits and ended up draining about a 1/2 gallon of water out of the fuel system just in the pits. Still couldn't get it to fire. Brought it back here, ended up draining almost 2 gallons of water out of the gasoline. That's more than any type of residual that might have been missed from when the first time I had water issues. So I'm thinking the sketchy speedway, not too far from here, that I got my race fuel at, they might have some problems with their tanks. So this is the fuel we pulled out of the late model after the failed practice at Owasso. And you can see how it's separated right in there. That all is water. See how this is very, very clear, no real tint to it. I'm going to show you what some fresh fuel should look like. This just got dumped out of the fuel filter in the back. There's more in the fuel cell. All right, so as you can see, we got the old fuel properly disposed of and take care of it. Got the pan wiped out. And what I'm going to do here is we're going to pour just a little bit of some new fuel from a different fuel supplier. Notice there's no separation. That is straight fuel. And see how it's got that kind of purplish tint to it? That is a lot better fuel. Not going to that fuel supplier again. Still got my armband on. So what we got here is this is a fuel line coming off the fuel cell to the fuel filter, obviously disconnected. We're going to do the old pressurize the fuel cell, push some fuel, water mixture out, hopefully not make a mess and splash everywhere. And we're going to see exactly straight from the fuel cell what we got going on. Now remember, or learn, if you didn't know, water is heavier than gasoline. So the water should settle down to the bottom of the fuel cell, gasoline to the top. And our pickup tube's on the bottom, all the way to the right, because that's where the fuel's going to slosh in the race. So we should be grabbing water straight from the fuel cell. And what I did is create a siphon, so this is just going to keep running until I get it higher than the fuel cell. Yep, that was almost a bad idea. All right. And you can see right there, we got a little bit of water still coming out of that fuel cell. So we'll keep pumping it through. Well, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for on this episode. The car is so close. The next race on our schedule is actually the M40 Speedway in Jones, Michigan. Technically, it's the Russell's M40 Speedway in Jones, Michigan. It's this really cool D-shaped, kind of tricky 3/8 oval. Love the racetrack. I used to race there with the truck series with the little half-scale mini cup cars. This thing's going to be a ride out there. Nervous, not going to lie. Very nervous about getting out on the track with it. I mean, come on. I spent 2 years putting it together. And, you know, the bottom line is it's built by me. This thing was built almost entirely out of used parts and optimism. Anything can happen. But we're close. We should be able to get there on the next video unless there's rain or something silly like that. Really, we just got to go through a few things, cross our I's, dot our T's, and we'll be set. So look for that video. Should be on the heels of this one. Man, I appreciate everybody tuning in, watching online. Check out our Facebook or Viewbook or FaceTube or whatever it is. Check us out. You know, the social media platforms. We're on there. If we're not on there, let me know and I'll get on there. No, appreciate it. Comment, like, share. Thank you. My name's Flipper. Until next time. What are you doing? I figured, instead of running a mechanical fan, it'd probably be a lot easier and simpler, and a little better to run an electric fan, especially down in there where that radiator is located. Kind of down in there. I said down in there. I down in there twice. Anyway, we're gonna try that again.